Recording in progress.
I'll call to order the Tuesday, June 27, 2023, Town Council Committee of the Whole to order 6:33. All councilors are present with the exception of Councilor Parker and Councilor Bordelon. Councilor Bordelon reached out to me, says she'll be here momentarily. Calendar and Communications, Councilor Kassiri.
Good evening, no report.
Councilor Parker. Oh, right. Councilor Franco.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jones.
No report, thank you.
Councilor Westervelt. Oh, Councilor McBride, you're online.
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief since it looks like everybody's being brief. Several emails regarding concerns over the property reuse. Glad to see that's on the agenda this evening. Also, several emails and questions on the stormwater authority and how that works. Also want to report that the Public Safety Committee has met several times. Councilor Franco and Councilor Cassiere has been involved. We're at the point where we're going to meet. I think the next meeting is on July 11th, and we're at the point we're going to hopefully put together some recommendations on how to handle the pilot, move that forward. Also wanted to know that I participated in a baby bonds program with Kevin Alvarez, who works for Treasurer Wooden's office in Connecticut. I won't go into great detail, but Connecticut starting July 1st put $381 million into a fund, a special revenue fund, that's going to grant every child born into poverty as of July 1st on $3,200 into a trust fund for them to assist in their development, and upon reaching the age of 18 up until 30, these children will be able to utilize those funds for 4 different purposes, whether it's education, starting a business, or housing. It's just a really good program that's going to be coming out soon, so I just wanted to report on that because it's a pretty dramatic thing that Connecticut's done. I think it's the first one in the state that's moving forward. So other than that, no report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Westervelt.
Thank you very much. I've had several communications regarding the Property Reuse Committee, as well as a topic that was brought up again 2 weeks ago or at our last meeting regarding the rules and regulations around flags on city property or town property. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jacome.
Thank you, Mayor. Received multiple emails in regard to Thrive 55, FOI, the town manager's report, 4th of July parade, and data centers. I also did talk to a gentleman probably 40 minutes ago in regards to the pride flag. And I also attended the Fitch High School graduation, so congrats to the class of 2023 and all the graduates. I also attended the Juneteenth event. We had Town Council Personnel and Appointments meeting on 6/20, and reminder that there's a rec master plan visioning session tomorrow at 6:30 here in the Town Hall Annex. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bordelon.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the delay. I had another meeting. I did notify the mayor. I received a lot of the similar communications. I did have questions regarding the manager's report regarding the flag raising. Hopefully he'll expand on that. I did receive emails regarding the tower in Noank, as well as stuff regarding P&Z in regards to data centers, proper reuse committee, and several other communications between large noises downtown Mystic on Pearl Street after some of the local things closed. I did attend the high school graduation. Congratulations to the class of 2023. It was nice to attend with Councilor Jacome, Councilor Melendez, as well as Councilor Parker. And as we sat there, one of the things that we had in common, which was very interesting, we looked on our row and we realized that we all were graduates of Fitch. All different years, we won't say the years, but it was really fun to attend and be there to support. I did attend the city's Juneteenth flag raising and festivities put on by Councilor Parker, as well as attended the town's Juneteenth celebration. I want to thank all the speakers that came out, as well as some of the performers. We were fortunate to have Big Lux from Westerly, who serves on the Groton Town Council, the Westerly Council over there, play, and he was very nice. I also attended a fundraiser at Ender's Island for folks that are addicted to alcohol and recovery out there on Ender's Island. They have every year. I also attended an event at the Guard Arts yesterday, highlighting mental health issues and trauma to minorities as a public health concern. They had a speaker, and it was just phenomenal. And that's all phenomenal. Looking forward to, communications regarding the July 4th parade as well. So really excited to attend that this year. Also did receive a communication asking, it was stated, and again, I haven't gotten confirmation yet. I am going to send out an email. I think my husband may have actually gotten confirmation that Mr. Kelleher had resigned from Fitch High School as the principal, effective, I don't know what the date was. It was said at the Board of Ed meeting yesterday when I watched it as well. So I'm not sure, but someone asked what was going on, and I directed them to the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. I too attended the Fitch High School graduation, so congratulations to the class of 2023, as well as the Juneteenth celebration at Town Hall. It was a good turnout, good event, and I'm excited for the continuation of that flag raising in years to come. On to the approval of minutes. I make a motion to move the June 13, 2023 meeting minutes. So moved.
Second, Jones.
Moved by Melendez, seconded by Jones.
Oh.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously, 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining.
Should I abstain because I wasn't there?
On to new business. Climate Action Plan Grant. Welcome.
Good evening. Megan Granato, Sustainability Resilience Manager for the Town of Groton.
Thank you. And can you give a little background on the grant?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'll start by explaining the funding program that the grant is being awarded out of, which is the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP Climate Resilience Fund. This is a brand new grant program for the state. It was first solicited last year, and we submitted proposal to that very first solicitation. The entire intent of the fund is to help local governments grapple with climate resiliency planning, and then actually starting to pursue actions into the design of resilience-focused projects. There's a very big desire through this grant program to help create pipelines of projects for federal funding, like through the Infrastructure Investment Job Act, Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of the programs coming out of those federal funds ask applicants to point to the plan that identified the project as a priority. So in order to help support local governments, local partners, the state has put together this Climate Resilience Fund. In the solicitation, it was also very clear that they wanted projects with really substantive community involvement, stakeholder engagement, especially projects that recognize social vulnerability and did specific outreach to vulnerable populations. They're following the same Justice 40 initiative as the federal government, and so they committed that at least 40% of the funds would go to applicants with vulnerable populations according to a environmental justice communities map that they prepared, which did include Groton. So we received, our, I guess, proposal was more competitive because we did fit that criteria. Proposals were submitted last year. We submitted ours in November, and we found out on June 14th that our proposal was selected for funding. It was one of 21 proposals. The state provided $8.8 million. Our request was for $200,000, and it was fully granted, which was really exciting. More specifically, ours is one of 8 planning grants that was selected for funding, and I think we're a really good company. Of the planning grant recipients, we are the second smallest by population. So there were much bigger municipalities on that list, via Hartford, Stamford, Bridgeport. So it was really exciting to see the town of Groton receiving that fund, especially in that group. So the proposal that we sought funding for was to develop a climate action plan for the town. And really the goal of that plan will to create the vision for a resilient Groton and determine the steps, or really the roadmap of actions that we'll need to take to achieve that vision. And we plan to do that through really robust community engagement throughout the entire process. For a little bit of context, my position as the Sustainability and Resiliency Manager was advertised with this being one of the key responsibilities, developing the town's first climate action plan. And I really see this as the process through which we are going to help build out the commitments made by the Town Council in 2021 through that resolution of commitment to address climate change, resiliency, and sustainability as a central management principle for all actions. That resolution really committed the town to being leaders on climate change, to integrating climate change considerations throughout town processes, things like budget evaluations, CIP evaluations, procurement. I mean, across the board, there's so many ways that you can integrate climate resiliency in that resolution really made it clear that the town wanted to take that seriously. I think this climate action plan development process is the process through which we really figure out what that looks like and how we're going to do that. As I mentioned, it will help prepare us for federal funding opportunities down the pike. I did also want to note this grant did not require a match, but we have $85,000 approved through a fiscal year 2022 CIP, which I think was probably really instrumental in us receiving these dollars, right? It shows how serious the town is about this type of planning. And in fact, the town's funding being in place is going to allow us to do a much more holistic, comprehensive plan. Due to kind of how the state's funding has to be directed to climate adaptation. I'll talk about this in a minute. We also want to incorporate mitigation. And so having our additional funds that can support the mitigation aspects of this are really going to help us put together a much more comprehensive plan. So many thanks to the Town Council for having approved that in FY 2022. So when I talk about adaptation and mitigation, those are kind of the two big components of this planning process. Mitigation being the process through which we figure out how to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, reduce how we're contributing to the climate problem. And we'll be doing that through updating a 2013 energy action strategy, looking at ways we can integrate solar, electrifying our fleet. And through all of this, it's going to be really important that we establish goals and really set the stage for what we need to accomplish, and then build out the actions that we'll have to take to accomplish those goals. And then with that, also develop a transparent process through which we're going to be measuring and tracking and sharing our progress. On the adaptation side, it's all about how we're preparing for and coping with both current and future climate change impacts. So things like sea level rise, droughts, large precipitation events, wind, wildfire, all of these different threats that we're grappling with, how we are going to respond and how we're going to support our community through that process. So we're going to be building on the work currently supported through a different grant focused on Mystic by expanding a vulnerability assessment to the entire town. We'll be looking at our critical infrastructure, looking at resiliency project opportunities on town-owned lands, really building on Parks and Recreation's designation of high-performance public spaces, start to take a little bit of a look at our stormwater systems to identify areas of concerns. And same as on the mitigation side, we're going to be establishing goals, defining priority actions, building that roadmap of what we as a town need to be doing to become more climate resilient. And like I mentioned, we want to do all of this through really robust community engagement. When I introduced myself to you all several months ago, we talked about youth voice and integrating youth voice into climate planning processes. And so that Youth Climate Summit that I talked about is going to be one way that we can integrate youth perspective into this process. We will certainly have public meetings, but we're going to do a lot more events where we try to connect to people where they are. So going out into the communities, having these conversations, showing up to events where people already are, to have tables, to have information, to really be able to dialogue, to listen and hear from people about their thoughts on climate change. And at the end of the day, this plan is going to really set the stage for my position for a lot of the things that I'm going to be going after additional grant funding to support in upcoming years. And it's really going to be the start of a larger conversation, right? The process doesn't end with the plan. If anything, the process only gets amplified with the plan. But having that plan is so crucial for us to do this important work in a prioritized way that's reflective of the community's needs.
All right. Thank you for that. And, thank you for, having a large part in winning this grant for Groton. When we were thinking about creating your position, one of the big selling points was that your position was going to be able to bring in more money to the town than it will cost to create the position. And I'm just really happy to see that coming to fruition. So just thank you for your efforts. Councilor Bordelon?
Thank you. Again, welcome, and it's great to hear. I think it's really vital and important to make sure that we're looking at climate change as a coastal community that's surrounded by water on many sides from the city on forward, from river to river. With that, I think it's important that we acknowledge the need for it, no matter the cost, because the cost, you can't put a price tag to life and health. You can't put a price tag on health. And so when your position was becoming available, there was talk about the grants, and I knew eventually that would come. But the most important thing is to get the position in place, which I'm very thankful that you're here. And I'm excited to see the grants come in. But with that, I think as a town, we should be seeking to fund the position to acknowledge that there's a problem and the sustainability, resiliency aspect of our community, despite what grants come in. Obviously, all the grants that come in is also bonus, but just having someone in the position outside of grants, to me, is the most important thing, to acknowledge and to help the town navigate what we're going to be seeing in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years and the things we're seeing now. With this grant, some of the research and things that I've read, there's this big thing where sometimes underserved communities are not as aware of climate change as other more prominent areas. And so, when speaking to some of the places in our area, like, looking at Pequannock Bridge and even Branford Manor, making sure people understand what the emergency routes are. Something as simple as that is not as well advertised as one would think. And when speaking to folks in these areas, they are in floodplains, definitely. Pequannock Bridge is in a flood zone. And I'm hoping that education piece and helping our youth to understand ways that we can reduce, reuse, recycle, which was drilled into me as a small child. And these efforts that you put forward here and that are in front of us tonight are just great assets to what's to come. And I think this is just really exciting. And I'm just hoping that the minority and underserved communities, which has been a greater push in some communities like urban areas like Bridgeport and things, what I'm reading, where they're really, really hammering down ways to bring the full group on board. So I thank you for your efforts. Obviously, I'm fully in support of this. It's a no-brainer. It's bringing in money. And I just want to thank you for all your efforts, because Groton said that they want to make sure we're doing things in a more coastal resilience and sustainable way. And we should really wrap around this and find ways that we can support this even more outside of this, even if it takes the town spending some of its own money to ensure our safety as a coastal community from rain, flood, fire. It shouldn't just be a paid position. So again, thank you. You have my support 100%. And welcome on board, and I welcome all that you bring. Thank you.
Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Is there, and I'm just looking through the packet, the things you just outlined, are they in this, your sort of basic schedule? Is it in this packet, or is it just these 2 pages?
A lot of what I talked about is described in the body of the narrative. We have a set template that you have to respond to. So it talks about the mitigation and the adaptation and kind of the main points or main topics that we'll be focusing under each of those. But unfortunately, it kind of gets spread out across several different questions in that proposal, yeah.
So it looks like this program has a duration from April 23rd to December 2024, is that?
That was, so they asked us to submit a timeline. So out of our best guess of when we might receive notification and actually be able to start is when we kind of set those arbitrary dates. So hearing about this grant obviously happened later than we anticipated. So my full anticipation is that the state will work with us when we actually execute the grant document to shift that entire timeline forward to what's appropriate.
So I guess my basic question is, do you see actions happening once you have sort of completed a final report, or are there things that you can sort of start to implement midstream?
Yeah, there's definitely things that we are implementing now. We're not waiting for having the plan to start working on things.
Okay.
Perfect example, right now, I have a summer fellow through the University of New Hampshire Sustainability Institute helping us look at vulnerability to heat. So she just did like a 26-page vulnerability assessment. We're setting up times to talk to folks, you know, many different stakeholders about heat, to raise awareness about heat, start putting together informational packets, you know, flyers about what people can do about heat in their own homes, way to stay safe. So that's one example of like, we're doing that now. You know, and there's been other examples I could go on. But yeah, definitely don't want you to think that we're sitting and waiting to have all this
So you can
hashed
kind of
out. But oh
backtrack.
yeah, no, we're definitely
You can
moving
backtrack and
forward.
sort of put those pieces as
Yep.
modules into the overall plan.
Exactly.
So we see some activity happening and stuff going on. So,
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you for putting all of this together and getting this as the success you've had so far. So I'm looking forward to more successes and see what kind of things you start to do. So, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Jacome?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Megan, for everything you've been doing. I guess I have a couple questions here. So this would include, the fund here would include both for track 1 and 2 and then implementation? Or just, can you explain a little bit about that?
No, yeah, that's a great question. So the solicitation was broken into 2 tracks. You had to apply under one. I submitted 2 proposals, one for track 1, one for track 2. Unfortunately, our track 2 proposal was not selected for funding. So this is just funding through track 1. That being said, I think that completing a track 1 project will probably make us a bit more competitive to then go and pursue a track fund application for something that came out of the climate action plan.
Okay, thank you. And then, would you think this would be a grant that would be, if the funds would continue, that we could reapply?
The intention, I believe, is for the state to offer this as an annual fund. That being said, the security of the funds is outside of my knowledge. I did recently receive communication from a partner, though, that said they anticipated that a second year would be coming online in the upcoming months.
Thank you. And then in many of these pages, I'm assuming that we would go ahead and, like you said, I think stated in there, we hire a consultant to kind of target the most vulnerable population, are you assuming?
Yeah, so we really want to go after a consultant team because we want a consultant. There's a lot of different expertise that a project like this is going to require, and we want there to be a member of that team in terms of some sort of firm that really walks the talk of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. We don't want any other environmental firm that says, oh, and we also do this, right? So we're going to structure the solicitation in the way that we really make it very explicit that we have that expectation of the teams that are coming in and bidding on the work.
No, I 100% agree. I think we should. I think that gives it that more credibility, especially when we're hitting all of our population instead of just a fraction of it. So, and then on page 33 in our packet, it broke down a 5% allocation on how the time would be spent, I believe, between the director, yourself, and I believe one of the planners. And I was just wondering how you would, how that would be tracked, or you intend to track that.
So that was, I think, rough estimate really just to show the reviewers likely kind of the dedication of staff time. A huge portion, probably about all of my time, is going to be spent on this when it's really cranking. But we wanted to make it clear that it was not me. I was not operating in a vacuum. So I will also be receiving direct support and, participation from Director of Planning, Assistant Director of Planning, and one of our additional planners who has tremendous expertise in coastal resiliency. So those percentages from a grant management point of view, they're not being used as match time where we would have to be tracking hours. That is something that we're doing on another grant. It was more informal just to show dedication of time. So if there is, for some reason, that we had to track that, we certainly could. We have the mechanism to do it. Like I said, we're doing on another project, but that's likely not going to be needed.
Okay, yeah, I think I get it. It's just more, you're putting on the application, showing that you're going to dedicate resources and time for that. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Bordelon?
Is there anything that's not kind of captured in here that maybe you might want to explain, or things that you think that you're kind of moving towards in, as far as grants go, or other things in which these grants, in this, as it's written up, sometimes when you write these up, you can't put everything, but are anything in particular that maybe you might want to share that, you've noticed that it's going to really benefit, or anything outlining that we, might be just good information, or?
It's a great question, and to be honest, I've had to reread this a couple times myself because I wrote it in November. But no, I just want to, express to the town council, we really want to go big with this.
Yeah.
We have $285,000. That is a significant amount of money to do a very comprehensive planning process. But through that comes, like I said, really extensive community engagement in ways we haven't done it before, bringing on contractual expertise in a way, really driving home, like I said, the sort of DIJ-focused contractors in the way that I'm not sure that we've had many projects like that. We want to be building partnerships out of this. We want to be changing the ways that, we include the public school system in this type of work. We want to be looking at town operations and providing an avenue for education and discussion. The 2021 resolution was really fantastic for setting expectations, but now I think we have to have those conversations of, okay, well, what does that look like for parks and recreation? What does that look like for finance? What does that look like for all the different aspects of our town government? And so I think this is the process through which we're going to be really pushing those conversations, trying to provide a lot of that education and having a lot of that interchange about what a more resilient Groton looks like. So I think, I hope that came across in the presentation and the proposal, but just wanting to really hammer home, this is something that we're committed to really doing at a significant scale.
No, I appreciate that. And I know something that I was extremely passionate about was, I saw Westerly, do the recyclable and trash compactors with the solar, and our downtown Mystic, which has tripled in its, economic, folks coming through, traffic, which then brings more trash, more waste, right? It's great, but it does bring more. And we have to look as a town to make sure we're handling that wonderful thing of economic development that also brings in an environmental change. And so I just hope that those things are looked in there as well. At the time when I had asked, the nip bottle money to be used. So I didn't know if any research in that of putting something in a high traffic area, which is on the coast where trash is. Right now we have like chain cans that, say one's recyclable, one's trash. And just changing that model and look throughout the town to have these more compactable trash receptacles that are solar driven, that don't need to be changed as frequently, start to just kind of change the platform. You see them out in Guilford, downtown as well, and it's just, we don't have those anywhere in our town as of yet. So just hoping that, those things are to come. It's something, I had brought up and have been passionate about, and I just hope that we start moving towards that. It's an overhead cost, but the cost of the town. And I'm not sure if there's grants that could be sought for purchasing those outside of the nip bottles. But I'm excited. I think this is a great presentation, a great start to good things to come. And I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. It's so important that we really take the time to consider this, or else we're not going to have a town. And it's probably one of the most important things, the environmental, cause and effect of what we do by living here. Again, I thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Franco?
Thank you, and thank you for getting this grant money. It's wonderful, and I'm really happy that you were awarded it. My question is, so if we come up with a action plan, which may include very expensive situations, is there a possibility to find different options for in the plan? Like, spending high-level money, or are there option B, to do it this way if we can't afford option A? Because I've seen sometimes where things have come back to us in a study, and they're like, here's the big Cadillac plan, and it's the most expensive plan we have, and this is what, that's the presentation to the town, and we're like, well, wait, maybe we can do another plan that's not so expensive. Will that also be taken into consideration in this plan that you're going to come up with?
So clarify question, in terms of like the actions that we identify that we need to do, for those actions, will there be consideration of how we can maybe phase things or break things apart or pursue them in different ways? Is that the question?
Yes, similar to that. Like if you say we need to have all electric cars, just for example, and the battery life and all these other issues that may come with electric cars and the maintenance of them within the town, is there a plan? Would you come up with a plan B if maybe the council wouldn't be willing to go that funding?
Absolutely. And I think that, when I talk about goal setting, I've talked with a lot of different people, especially around setting efficiency goals, greenhouse gas reduction goals, and people have various ways of thinking about it, right? Some people think, oh, you should set a really ambitious goal and it's aspirational and you see if you get there. And other people say, no, we're only setting a goal that's realistic that we can actually achieve. And I more so fall in the latter camp, right? I think you have to be realistic, especially when you're making commitments about what you're committing to, and showing that there might be multiple ways to reach that commitment. So I think for fleet electrification, that's a perfect example. I don't think that we would be recommending that within 3 years we replace every town fleet vehicle, right? But I think it's more so about, okay, what processes, what kind of things do we want to be working towards? And then within the time that we have and the priorities that we set, how can we realistically achieve that? Same thing with larger scale projects that might be identified through this. There might be, an aspirational goal of achieving something really big, but there might be some language in there about all the things that have to build up to that. And maybe it's more realistic that the next step is doing a further assessment or doing analysis of funding opportunities so that things are taken in pieces that are reasonably bitten off at one time, as opposed to just saying, we're going to fix all the problems and walk away.
All right, because that's one of my concerns, is that the plan comes back with what I call the Cadillac plan, the top shelf, the best thing, and then we can't afford to do the recommendations in it, may become a problem. So I would also like to have reasonable things that can be put into place by the town council that maybe in the future will be implementing such plans. And like you said, they don't all have to be done at once. There might be phase-in, and there might be, we choose pieces out of the plan to work towards a goal. So I thank you for getting this grant and funding for your plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And I definitely agree, if I'm allowed to respond. This is really, I think, the developing a roadmap. There's going to be some low-hanging fruit. There's going to be some things that are more aspirational, but we're going to be mapping out things that we're going to achieve over the next 5, maybe 10 years. So there definitely isn't going to be the expectation that we have the plan and now we have to implement it all right now. This is more so setting a process through which over the upcoming years, we are taking those actions and building our resilience over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just note that Councilor Bordelon stepped away at 7:02. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
I don't think we put the motion
We
on
don't
the
have the
floor
motion
yet.
on the floor. Okay.
I'll make a motion to recommend a resolution endorsing the acceptance of the CRF award, authorizing the town manager to sign all required grant documents for such program and refer the matter to the RTM. I so move.
Second.
Moved by Kasiri, seconded by Jones. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously, 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to Memorandum of Agreement 2022 State Homeland Security Grant. I believe we have the police chief here.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome. Let me find this page. Can you give a, thank you. Would you be so kind as to give a little background on the grant?
Sure. Quite simply, this is the Homeland Security Grant, and what we have here is a memorandum of agreement with the state of Connecticut. The state is the actual grant recipient. They disperse these funds through the regional emergency planning teams, which we're a part of. It's administered, the fiduciary agent that administers this, the Council of Governments for the southeastern part of the state. Really, what we get out of this is equipment, some training. There's funds available for us to request through that REPT, which is the Regional Emergency Planning Team, to provide funds for equipment that is good for the entire region. For instance, in Groton, we house a couple of pieces of equipment that are used or that were purchased under this grant. We have a couple of light towers. We have 2 message boards. We have a shelter trailer that really is for the Red Cross, but we house it here, as well as a traffic control trailer that has cones and things that are necessary if we're doing some diversions, which we utilized back in April, as you might recall, for the bridge accident. So we keep those here, but they're regional assets. They're not just specifically for the town of Groton, but we house some of them. Other communities have other pieces of equipment that are purchased under this grant. And again, this simply just allows the town manager to sign the memorandum of agreement. These funds don't become available until October. Again, they go to the state of Connecticut, and then the regions look to make a case for some of the funds that they need, and it's dispersed that way.
Thank you. Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for being here.
Sure.
Do you have sort of a dollar amount that this is, or is it just sort of come as it
No, we get
comes?
it comes every year to the state. It varies from year to year, and again, it's based on projects. It's based on what's pitched by the REPT steering committee. So the state, again, is the grant recipient. They're the state administering agent, so they disperse it out. It depends. For every year, it changes a little bit, but those funds we don't really know about until October.
During, I guess, ARPA and the budget process, we approved some money for an emergency vehicle, support vehicle for the police department, and the accident that happened on the Gold Star Bridge was the perfect example of where that might be used. Are these kinds of funds things that could help contribute to sort of
Conceivably, but it's unlikely, because
Okay.
again, it's stuff that has to be used for the entire region. So it's if there were funds left over at the end of the year, possibly, but in all likelihood, those may be used by other projects that they have. And it would have to go through a whole process that, go through the region, through the state. We have discussed this before. I've discussed it with the regional coordinator for Demis, but there's not as much money as there used to be, so they'll rate the projects kind of like what you did during the ARPA funds. I think it's unlikely, but conceivably it's possible to get money through that.
So you mentioned a couple things like the Red Cross vehicle that sits at your yard. It's those kinds of things
That's
that
right.
this money's, so it may be some kind of radio system or a spot lighting system or something like
Yeah,
that.
and in the grant, if you look in the documents that are provided here, it does have some specifics as to what can be applied for. If you'll just bear with me for a second here, I can kind of give you a little bit of an idea. So annually, projects that are eligible for this are personal protective equipment, so the PPE that we got during COVID, incident management training teams. It goes to the regional bomb squads, and the state of Connecticut has 4 regional bomb squads. We don't have one specifically for Groton, but we utilize the state police bomb squad. They get money through this. Hazmat training and equipment, shelter supplies, the signs that I talked about, the variable message boards, the lighting trailers. It can also be used for cybersecurity training, so that has been used. So things like that are really more generic and benefit a
regional.
greater population.
And more regional.
That's right.
Broader than just the town of Groton.
That's right.
So, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and I will make a motion to recommend a resolution to approve Town Manager John Burt act on behalf of the Town of Groton with respect to receipt and use of 2022 State Homeland Security Grant Program funds to support regional set-aside projects and to approve him to execute said memorandum of agreement. So moved.
Second, Westervelt.
Moved by Melendez, seconded by Westervelt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously, 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, Chief.
On to the Resilience and Sustainability Task Force update.
Yes. Good evening. Zell Stever, Chairman of the Groton Resiliency and Sustainability Task Force. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. This is basically an update of what we've been doing over the last a year or so. During the period of COVID, we did not get a chance to really come in and spend much time with you, so that made things a bit difficult. Starting with the fact that you appointed this task force back in April 2019, we've been operating basically for that entire period of time. The people who were selected and sit on the task force is on the next slide here. These are the original members of the task force. We have several members in the audience. Frank Bowen is here tonight, as is Mickey Weiss, and I don't think anybody else is here. This group has basically hung together during the last 4 years and I think done a really remarkable job. 2 people have left us. One is Sarah Kelly, who was a retired Pfizer executive, who is very much involved or has been involved with healthcare, and Victor Verlager, who's an MD who is interested in a whole bunch of issues around the health issues of climate change. Moving forward to the next slide, let me say that I'm going to not show you all the details here because we actually have briefed you on this. We have done a number of things over the last 4 years, and I just may want to catch those very quickly. The task force has, during its meetings, met with virtually all of the town's staff, senior staff, department heads, and tried to assess what they had in terms of plans and that related to sustainability, climate change, or resiliency, and went through that in some careful detail. And one of the really results of that whole effort, which then really basically piggybacked on what had been done back in 2011 when the first task force had been convened by that town council back then and had reported out, is that we recommended that the town of Groton hire a full-time manager for resiliency and sustainability, and you all had acted upon that, and I'm very pleased that we now have Megan Granado on board, who just gave you a briefing. And I should say we're extremely pleased with her ability to basically work between the silos, if you will, and to really engage in a very independent yet very collaborative way, and we're very much appreciative of that. The other item that, well, there are several other items that we've been involved with. When this last year, the town received a grant to do the Mystic River Downtown Resiliency Study. That was done through the planning office Megan has been basically the key person involved with that. I'm sure she'll be back to brief you on that. But one of the things that has happened is that the member of our task force, Frank Bowen, has been sitting on that advisory committee as those meetings have gone forward. Frank has also been the person that we've had involved with the Groton Long Point Bridge project, which is now, I guess, going on something like 15 years. And we understand very recently that that's been taken over by the state. So I think all the work that's been done by that group that looked at the bridge now is going to be transferred to the state. However, I believe a lot of that will probably end up coming back to the town council and probably, I suspect, to our task force to look at this. And the whole issue is really having an appropriate bridge for connecting Groton Long Point and Mumford Cove to the rest of the community. So if we go to the next slide, we've got some of the activities that we did this last year. And one of the things that you all got very much involved with was the data center that was being proposed by several different entities. And the task force got involved because of two issues. The amount of energy that was going to be required to basically run that kind of facility. It comes down to something being about the nature of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier to create enough electricity to actually run that facility. And when that facility was going, if that facility could not get the power from the normal sources, it had then proposed to have a series of diesel generators to back up that, and that would have ended up having a real air quality issue for our entire community. So we very much opposed that and participated in those proceedings. We have also, one of the tasks that was requested of us when we were formed was to provide education in the community. And because of COVID, that really slowed us down quite a bit. But this last spring, we actually got off our first climate change forum, and that was held back May 9th, was changing climate impacts in the Connecticut shore. And what we did is we showed the really terrific movie that had been put together, and then we had a community discussion, and that was over at the senior center, and I think was well attended, and there was a good back and forth, and so we were pleased with that. And that's one of the activities that I think we're going to want to continue to do. And so there are two other ones that we have in the pipeline right now. One is a second forum around heat impacts of climate change. And that's probably one of the more important issues that we're going to be facing. For example, if the temperature goes up here in Groton during one of these summers and goes up to a high 90s or above into the 100-degree range and stays that way for a series of days, a whole lot of people are going to be in serious trouble, particularly those people who are disadvantaged and don't have the resources to deal with it. And then the third forum that we're probably going to hold is really one that is dealing with major coastal storms. And it'll be quite a bit different from, I think, what we'll have coming out of the Mystic flood resiliency study. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about with places that will affect places like Groton Long Point, Mumford Cove, and some of the other vulnerable areas such as over in the city, where you are not only confronted with high water, but you're confronted with high wind and high waves. So that's sort of where we are with that. When we meet, we continue to update ourselves on resiliency, sustainability, and climate change during our monthly meetings. And while you would think not much changes, actually a lot changes. It's become very clear over the last couple of years that if we're going to get on top of climate change, we're going to have to, what they say, go electric. And you would say, well, why go electric? Well, because electricity, if it's done properly and it is managed properly, potentially we can use wind, we can use solar, We can use hydro, which are sources of energy that don't require fossil fuels by and large, although that's not completely true. Then the most recent meeting we've had with organizations around the community was we had a very excellent briefing with the U.S. sub-base where we went and saw what they're doing. And as you probably have driven up on the west side of town, up by Route 12 there, you notice all those solar panels. And they, while the Navy claims to take no credit for that because that's was done by a private organization on behalf of the Navy, they have in fact got a fairly robust effort underway. For example, one of the other things they've done, for example, they are now raising all the piers so that as sea level comes about, they will be able to manage the fleet of subs that use that facility. And then the other item is that they have a really interesting system for power generation up there on the hill. And so it's actually, while they don't say much about what they're doing, they're actually doing a great deal. And as some of you know, I've been the person in our task force who's sort of been very interested in figuring out how to reduce energy in the public transportation. And so I've been working on both the feasibility study that we were able to get passed in the state legislature a year or so ago. And that's ongoing, and we'll be reporting out to you later in the summer about the results of that. Unfortunately, we had a really unfortunate situation in this particular legislative session because the legislature decided to defund a good part of Shoreline East. It was operating at 66% of capacity, of 66% of pre-COVID capacity this past year, and the governor's proposed to cut that down to 40%. And everybody who's involved with the train system thinks that's the kiss of death, and so we're going to have a tough time bringing that back. The why that's so important is that basically greenhouse gases in the state of Connecticut, 40% comes from the highway, principally from transportation. And as you all know, because you drive it, I-95 is the issue. And if you don't have any alternative for the public, they're going to have to take I-95. And as some of you maybe have experienced, it's sometimes like being in a very long parking lot. And that's simply unacceptable, both from a social point of view, but it's very unacceptable from a business point of view, particularly when we have learned that Electric Boat in its facilities in New London, Groton, and in Quonset are going to be hiring 5,700 new employees just this year. And that means bringing those people back on the road with no alternative to get to work. And that is, what we think, a pretty abominable situation. So that's what's going on with that. The continuing, we're going to be following up with the Mystic Downtown Resiliency Study with Megan and John Reiner. We're going to be continuing to, as you've heard before, supporting the notion of putting solar panels on all our town buildings and heat pumps where it's appropriate. We're going to be pushing for electrification of school buses. And you may have seen just today, the state of Connecticut awarded the city of Stamford a huge amount of money to go electric in the buses. And I know all of you have driven down there by the airport, and you know the number of buses we have, and you know what it's also like to be out here at 2:30 in the afternoon in terms of the cloud of brown, gray, black smoke. And there has been some effort on the task force to really get looking at organic composting that's aerobic and anaerobic, potentially the aerobic is a way of reducing our waste, our waste load, and recycling the organic materials so that it can be basically used as a soil augmentation. EV charging stations, electric vehicle charging stations, stations are going to be important. It's being pushed by the state. It's certainly being pushed by the federal government, and that's going to be important. And then I would say that the town of Groton needs to really consider looking at a high-level strategic plan for the redevelopment of Route 1. Now, I know that's principally in the framework of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it's something that you all need to stay on top of because the traditional way is that we set up a set of conditions under which, and then people come. Well, I think it's going to have to be more aggressive than that, and a strategic plan is really going to be necessary to make that happen. And if we get the train here, then we have the possibility of having transit-oriented development, which then means that we potentially could have people living in downtown on the Route 1 corridor and being able to take mass transit to work. And that's a very attractive alternative. And it basically, it's not saying you can't use your car or not having a car, it just provides you with, I think, an important alternative. Now, those are all what we call mitigation activities, basically. It is what are the things that we can do to prevent climate change from getting worse? In other words, what can we do to keep CO2 fundamentally from getting in the atmosphere? And that's really what mitigation is all about. Now, as you well know, this is a real tangle of words. You say, well, we're going to mitigate this, and people say, what? And that's just the term of art that's developed over the last 15 years. I don't particularly like it, but it's what it is. It means how do we figure out how to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we use so we reduce the amount of CO2 going into the atmosphere. And that's very important. Now, the other side of this equation, one that we think is going to be extremely important, and this is in good part what Megan presented to you, is the adaptation part of it. That is, we know climate change is going to happen. It is happening. It's not debatable. It is happening. Sea level is measurably higher. It is measurably hotter. We've got all these things happening, and the question is, then how do we organize and operate in that kind of environment going forward? And that is, how do we adapt to this problem? And that's going to be very important. And so some of the things are going to be key here is the climate action plan that Megan just talked about. Watershed management is probably going to become more important as time goes on. Waterfront development, particularly through the planning and zoning and the building code, is going to be important. Major disaster planning with our partners. The chief has left, but Captain B has left, but he's the guy who's really involved with that. It's going to be very important. Sea level and storm events, human health. Again, Megan's involved with that with the summer intern. And then how do we continue to do building audits and upgrades? And we already have, and you need to understand this, I think, clearly, and let the public know that we actually already have done a lot of good things in the town. It's not as though we have not done anything. We have done a lot of good things. The lighting in this room is all upgraded, so it uses a whole lot of energy. And that's good because what that does is it reduces our cost for buying energy, buying electricity. And so it's a win-win situation. And then finally, the thing that's going to come up and that we're probably going to need to get involved with, we've talked about this with the planning office, is how do we do the plan of conservation and development in a way that I think really makes this come together. Sorry, I didn't move that slide button. You've got it all in front of you. So this is sort of the update. And so what we'd like to hear is your response. What do you guys think about what we're doing? And then particularly about the resolution that you passed on the resiliency and sustainability, and what do we need to do about going ahead and developing a process for future actions that relate to our budget and to our capital CAP programs. And I should say that while we've been sitting on the sidelines of some of this stuff, we noticed that sometimes their projects come through here and we never hear a word about that being considered. And I would like to see if we could step into that slowly, and the task force thinks that's very important, so that we actually start to use that powerful tool as we go forward. And then finally, we would be interested in your discussion with you about what should be the future of our task force going forward. Now that we've got someone on board, we hope this is not just the first person, hopefully one of a number of people who will come aboard through grants and other funding resources to actually make this all happen. I'd like to say that finally, I mean, really, this is a chronic problem. It's not going to go away. There is no one fix. It's going to be a process that's going to take us going forward, one step at a time, and there's going to be some missteps, but we've got to move forward to really make Groton a livable community. And so with that, there are a couple of slides that you've got in front of you that I don't think I necessarily, well, I'll just blow through them. This is sort of the essence of what that resolution you passed was back in March 2nd. And then finally, just in case you think you need to have some backup, this is what the state mandates. Now, as you say, it's pretty loosey-goosey, but those are some really important standards to be looking at. What is the 20 inches of sea level mean for us by 2050? That is less than 27 years from now. Less than 27 years. And then the Connecticut utilities are expected to have 40% electrical generation in a really new way. And then finally, a call for 100% carbon-free by 2040. So for your own edification, you know these terms, but those are ones that people may bring up to you. We give you some really sort of specialized terms to think about. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I would ask either Dr. Boland or Mickey, and certainly would welcome Megan to come join us in this conversation.
Sure. Thank you for that update. Thank you for the work that you've done, as well as the work of your group in consultation with the town staff. Councilor Bordelon?
First, I just want to say, excuse my absence, I was at the planning and zoning meeting to speak about one of the items that's on here, which was data centers. Unfortunately, our meetings run at the same time, and so to speak as a citizen under public comment about data centers, I had to step away. But the first two items I was in fully support of bringing in money into the town. With that, you have data centers on here, and I think, the action and things that you guys are doing as this, Groton Resilience and Sustainability Task Force, I can't thank you enough for what you've done to enlighten, to enhance the quality and well-being of our life and health in our community. Again, for me, as a person who's survived stage 3 breast cancer and seeing the high levels of cancer in this community, I can't stress enough why, what is going on here. And the work that you guys do, dig deep into that. Dig deep into that big why that we don't know about yet. That we do know, some don't, but the changes that we can make now are going to impact us. So I just first want to thank you for all the work that you're doing by looking at the railroad station as a mass transit hub for our Navy, our Pfizer, our EB. We have 3 major employers here, as well as a resident who lives here who goes to Mystic frequently. I would love to be able to take a city bus down there. I'm not partial to not jumping on myself. There's nights where I don't want to drive in there because there's no parking. Having that accessibility, either transit, train, or bus, so that I can leave my car home and just jump out and enjoy my community. So the things and efforts that you guys have put forward, even though I may have missed some of the events because it kind of had other obligations, I'm in full support. I think what you're doing is groundbreaking and compared to some surrounding towns. I think the decision in 2021 was one of the best decisions that I was happy to be a part of, because I do think as we're moving forward, you should be looking and developing our town in a way that's moving it to be carbon neutral in the years to come, and looking at ways that we can not be so dependent on fossil fuels and things as such. I also feel that, it starts with our development in our town is my thing. When you look at our town development, I looked at some other towns that were like very carbon friendly and green out west, and some places like Colorado and small little communities around. One of the things that they're doing is making sure it's part of their RFP process. When a developer comes, they're making sure that they're planning certain things that are, native. They're making sure that they're putting on roofs and shingles that have the proper runoff capabilities that prevent. They're making sure that they're putting in solar, telling them this is what we want. So these are the things I'm hoping to see. Unfortunately, we're time, and I could probably talk about this on and on. But one of the also things I was seeing, especially in the minority communities, is the underserved of folks to have access to a pool to swim. As sea level rises, we saw what happened with Hurricane Katrina, as a person who had family down there. One of the things overwhelmingly, what happened? They drowned. And as sea level rises here, that's going to be a concern. So that's another effort to bring in money to make sure everyone has the ability and the accessibility to learn to swim. And that's all I have for time. But I could keep going on this. And I can't thank you guys enough. This is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I commend you all for all your hard work.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Stevers and the committee. On your adaptation activities, the page lists a bunch of things. Do you have a sort of a number one, number two, number three? Is there a main priority in this? You have climate action, watershed, waterfront development, major disaster. Is there some kind of a ranking, so that we know when these kind of things come forward, which ones are more important than others?
The answer is, I don't think we have a ranking per se. Now, we have a couple of issues that we know are really critical, like being prepared for a hurricane is critical, being prepared for heat is critical. But part of what I guess we have to be a bit adaptive ourselves. If the money is going to be becoming available, we want to grab it for whatever we can do. And so that may shift things a little bit back and forth. But I think we need to hit those things that are likely to be the real problems for our community first. I mean, this study that Megan's got going here in Mystic, it's a, wow. It's a huge, that whole center downtown is a huge tourist attraction. And, oh boy, we got a problem. Now, how we figure that all out and whether it's a structural solution or a partial structural solution or just a partial understanding of really what the issues are is complicated. I mean, some of the stuff looks like it makes real good sense, like get the electrical unit, get the electrical box out of the basement, because if it goes under salt water, it's going to be a mess. So there's some things that are probably going to fall out.
So I'll just pick off one of them. I know and I wasn't here during Hurricane Sandy, but, houses on Groton Long Point that were destroyed in order to get funding they needed to raise, they had to raise themselves up. That seems like sort of a planning and zoning kind of thing, where our planning and zoning would be changing rules to adapt for rebuilding of houses that get destroyed during a hurricane. Are you making recommendations on those kinds of things?
We're not making any recommendations on that, but let me just give you some sense of what the problem is. Yes, you can raise the house, and a lot of people have raised the houses down there. But if you get that storm coming in, not just once a year or every 5 years, but like once a month, you've got a problem. You've got sewer lines, you've got water lines, you've got electricity, you've got telecommunication facilities, all those things going on there. And so I don't know if there's a real good solution to figuring that out. I mean, Frank, do you want to step into that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind when you're talking about storm effects. And you mentioned Sandy. Sandy is a storm of record, yes, but it was a storm here, not a hurricane. The major effects were down the western end of the Sound for a lot of different reasons, different surge levels down there. And I think the point that Zell made about the annual frequent storm event, unnamed. We had two this last year that resulted in significant flooding downtown. And you can come to the Ram Island Low Dock and Ram Island Yacht Club and find that every month it's underwater. So it's the persistent, and there are areas, I think we the town, were chastised for giving a building permit down on by Mystic Shipyard because the fellow was surprised when his front yard was wet and high water, sort of thing. So in your planning process, I think that you have a hierarchy. The major event that's going to flood Groton, Long Point, pick a name, and really put a bunch of islands out there and destroy housing, that's certainly a concern. Another 1939. But I think if we sat and looked at the planning right now and how you're going to prioritize things, you're going to think about raising some roads, putting that in Public Works budget, regular raising. Front Street in Noank should be raised, Pickenham again, it can go around. Gravel and Pearl and are probably going to be raised as part of the study, we'll see. And the annual average, at least, storm event, you want to accommodate. Then you look at what it's going to mean if we raise sea level by 20 inches. The areas that may be subject to that are going to significantly increase. So you look at the whole picture, and I think we're going to start out probably looking at the whole picture and picking off some of the areas. The question before, I think that Megan got about the economics and the whole thing, very much a concern. And in some of the documents we looked at, what would it mean if these areas were regularly flooded to the town tax roll? And how would we all manage that? Me from my tax bill, and because I'm up on the hill investing, and you from your legislative responsibilities, how would you handle that? So there's an interesting
Well, I guess
process going
that's
on.
sort of my question. I just randomly picked the Sandy one just because I was picking something off this list. But, we have to make decisions on the council all the time. We make them during the budget process. We make them lots of different times.
Sure.
And we don't usually have any overriding guidelines along any of these things on is this a good decision or not? We just look at it in terms of other criteria. And so I'm just wondering on things, this list of things, I can say for myself, I've never, I haven't made the decisions based on anything really off of this list.
Right.
And is there a way that the resiliency committee can give better guidelines for the decisions we have to make along these kinds of things? I mean, usually decisions are based on.
I think they could certainly be developed, and I think that's
Yeah.
certainly part of the climate action plan, is to establish that kind of a framework, but absolutely.
Right. I mean, we just approved two basic grants tonight, one for Megan and one for for public safety.
Sure.
Our public safety grant, we didn't have none of this was, implied in there. So that's my sort of thinking, is that we're asked to sort of make decisions about these things along these lines, and we don't really have any, a checklist, a guideline, or anything to kind
I
of
think
figure
that's
out
a
what to
good
do.
question to put to the task force. If you're going to come up with these things, give us some guidelines.
Give us some guidelines so we can kind of make a decision based along something that might be, and it might just kind of move the needle a little bit. We're not sort of making a final decision on something, but it just kind of moves the needle that we're going, we have heat and human health. Well, the thing about the lights is a good decision that we, decide on energy use. So, can we move that? So just having some kind of a guidelines, I think, is a good task for the.
Some of these things, there aren't good guidelines for yet. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality. There are some things that the energy efficiency stuff, people are getting a good handle on. And so there are some things that we can, I think, help you with. And then part of the reason you've got that resolution that you put together is so that you look at these things as they come up. And maybe that's where we have to help on a particular problem. And it's a chronic problem. We got the squarely, and it's unlike the COVID, where it was a very acute issue. This is slow, you don't see it, you don't feel it every day, but you all were here last week when the sky turned yellow and orange, and that has an impact. So, and we don't have a solution for that. So there are some things that we're going to be able to, I think, do a good job on, and other things that we're just going to have to figure out how to adapt to it. And for example, it may be cooling centers for certain groups of people.
Right.
Or if in the case you get a storm on Groton Long Point, there's places where people can go so they don't, a shelter of sorts. And so those are the kinds of things that are,
Yeah.
and some of that stuff we already have in place, and so it's a little bit,
Yeah, or if we had more fires in Canada, that our air conditioning systems and HVAC systems can handle that. And, they have filters where we may not have ever thought about putting those kind of filters in because we didn't have this problem before, but
Right.
it may be coming more. So, great. All right, thank you.
Counselor Chacon?
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Jones kind of asked one of the similar questions of like how you would prioritize things. So thank you for that. I understand there's a bunch of things that can be worked on. What I will ask is either to the town manager or the task force is, I believe, is a building code already currently being worked on to include the sea level rise?
I'm not very familiar with it. I don't think they've started with things like saying, elevate the houses and that kind of thing.
Okay, so I mean, that's something either the town manager, I think, or the task force could advise better. I mean, I don't know much on how that, we would even tackle that in the first place.
I think this is going to be a tricky one, because, for example, in Rhode Island, there's a state law that says you got to build 3 feet above the 100-year storm. It's just, that's the way it is, and everybody has to do that. And we don't have any such standard here in Connecticut. And so then you get into the issue, well, if we do it and the next town over doesn't do it, then we're putting ourselves in, some economic risk on one hand. On the other hand, maybe we're being really smart. So that's tough. Now, we do have the authority, certainly, under state law to make changes to our own building code to reflect this. And so we do have opportunity. But it's a complicated, part of it's zoning, part of it's the building code. And then you get into zoning, Groton Long Point does its own thing. Knowing does its own thing. So, and then does this apply to the city? So it's going to require a lot of work.
No, absolutely.
But don't despair. When I hear it, we're going to require a lot of work. It's a subject that you wouldn't be alone on. And there are standards, and there are, the issues change depending on whether you're looking for federal, state funding, or whether you're doing it on your own. So there's a lot of things like that.
I guess the whole point of, Megan is putting together this climate action plan, and that's required in order to get further federal funding. And there is a fire hydrant of money going to be becoming available for all kinds of things. Everything from solar panels on roofs, heat pumps, to refrigerators, and it goes on and on and on. And this is money that, if it's used wisely, really makes us a far more resilient community. So there are all these things that are, and we're hitting this at an unbelievable time. I didn't think a year ago or 2 years ago this was even possible, and yet we have it there. Now, what's happened is the Congress has passed the legislation and funded it, and they've turned it over to the agencies. And the agencies are having the exact kind of problem you're talking about. They're trying to figure out how best to spend this money. And you think they could do that overnight? They're developing regulations and applications and so forth, and it takes time. And so what they're doing is buying a little bit of time by having us do this plan, and then we can then go ahead and apply for it. So this is all going to unfold, I think, in a pretty dramatic sort of way.
I would hope that the plan looks at not only the work and the cost of doing something, but also the work and cost if you don't do something. Because, yeah, it may be costly to folk to raise their house, let's say. It's also going to be costly for them to rebuild their house if it gets wiped away. It may be putting you guys on the hot seat in terms of controversial decisions that you have to make, but if you don't make them, and things get, communities get wiped out, you're also going to be on the hot seat for that too. So I think that I don't envy you guys for that reason. I think these are tough decisions, and I think that the plan hopefully is going to look at both sides of that coin. What's the cost if you do it, and what's the cost if you don't do it?
Yeah, I mean, I thank you guys for what you do, the task force does. I think you guys can, direction from what I'm thinking, in my opinion, is continue to think of ideas, what we should be doing, what you think we should be doing, bring that to the council. I do think, like you said, we are doing stuff, the Mystic Downtown Resiliency Study, and then I believe, is it Charles Barnum will be getting the solar panel roof? So we are doing things like that, little by little, maybe not as fast as some of us would like, but I think it is being done. As for the school bus electrification, if there is money out there, I mean, that's something to look into. That is a whole different topic, but definitely interested in seeing if there's funds out there. Like you said, there's a pot of money out there that we can continue pursuing. Thank you.
And I would just add to say that what makes these decisions doable is if they're fact-based. And so we've been trying to, I think, look at sources of expertise that are based on data and fact. And so the Mystic planning effort has been looking at historical records of what's happened in Mystic over time. And we have right here in Groton at Avery Point, the Center, CIRCA, the Center for Adaptation.
Resilience and Climate Adaptation.
And these are people with world-class credentials in terms of assessing climate change impacts, particularly flooding and sea level rise is the biggie. And, they can show you historical data and then predictions from that that will help you make your decisions, help us provide our priorities.
Good. All right. Councilor Bordelon?
Thank you. I mean, I guess, it was brought up like prioritizing the list, and as a person who follows a lot of what's happening in the state, because it trickles down into the towns around us and looking at other towns, it's hard to prioritize, and so I can understand why, you have them on here. You have to take what you can get when it becomes available, so it's kind of a bit of a jumping game. The state might give you a grant for this one year, and the next year take it away and throw this other initiative. So I like that the priorities are here, but you have to have the flexibility to jump when you can. So it has to be kind of flexible. And I think I would leave it to the experts, as you guys, to be able to navigate that when needed. So I thank you for that. And I just know the way it comes down, if there's no set pattern. All of a sudden there might be a grant that fits the Mystic thing, but then it might be something to help with the cooling. So you kind of have to move where you can. One of the other things that I saw in some other bigger urban areas that they were doing as an initiative talking about cooling was doing surveys and things and asking people, do you have access to cooling? Because not everybody up north has HVAC, right? Not everyone has central air because we're not the South. Just like the South doesn't always have heat in certain areas. So up here, as we're warming, houses are now being built more with central air or those split, electric units. But they were helping people get access to affordable window units. So that's an initiative that a town can take on and find funding and help. Also, when we talked about the fires, fire is going to be not just flooding, but fire is going to be another big problem. And that smoke that came in, there was a lot of people who were immunocompromised or had breathing complications that could not close their windows because they were too hot and they could not cool themselves. So there's just a lot of things to think about that maybe I take for granted because I could close mine and control my climate and filter it. Others could not. And then the other thing, I can understand with the regulations where you don't want to go too fast too soon, but definitely looking at the way we develop, especially with our big developers. Any new corporate companies coming in that are building large mass apartments and development, we should be setting the standard stating that it should be, solar and it should be, this and this type of thing to neutralize our carbon footprint. Those are things that we can do. We can't change the past always and go back and change the regulations so they're rebuilt, but we can now with anything moving forward. So if Groton Long Point was to build something new, then it might say you need to be here. You're not going to require everybody to go back. They should if they want. I agree, a cost. But what you can't worry about is that we also have to be careful. We have to worry about the cost of life to our rescues that are going to have to go down there and rescue people when things aren't, with the flooding the sea level rise, the flash flooding from those few storms. I mean, my house even had flooding for the first time ever from some uphill water that came in and just a little into my garage. It never has been there. So there's so many things to look at, but I think we start with our process and our rules and our regulations through the town by looking at the planning and zoning and moving forward as far as also RFPs and things and development that are coming in where they're going to come in and make money. They should also be making sure that they're protecting our community and cutting down on the carbon footprint. So making sure.
Thank you.
My last thing really quick, if you
Thank
don't
you,
mind, is the
Councilor Warren.
solar panels. We're putting them on after the fact. Those should be, anything that's been built in the last 5 years should already have solar panels.
Councilor's
It's a
time has
no-brainer.
expired. Thank
So
you.
that's the way we make change, is now. Anything
you.
and coming forward. Thank you.
Councilor McBride?
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate the level of detail and the work that was put into this. Very informative. It's not my area of expertise, but really enjoyed going through it all. I just want to kind of follow up with, I think it was Councilor Jones, or I'm not sure if it was who said it, but in terms of priority listing, if there was a way where this could be prioritized with a little more detail in terms of what initiatives are most important, even if it wasn't a 1 through 30, but if it was a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, at least it would help me understand which areas we should focus on more. And not just with the priorities, but also cost, because as we all discussed, cost is going to be the most important impact here on what we can move forward with. And I think we want to remember that we did discuss that stormwater authority a few weeks ago, and this could be one initiative where the fees that could be assessed on, the state or the federal government, the nonprofits could help pay for some of these initiatives going forward if we consider that. But I really like what you put together. I think if we can take it one step further and for the top priority items, have a plan in place and have really, shovel-ready projects to move forward with, it would help with our grant submittals, because a lot of the grants, what everybody sees is if the state and the Fed see that you're on top of it and you have a plan, they're more likely to reward some funding for that. So I think if we can take this further and have a plan, like you mentioned the organic composting with SCARA, that the anaerobic digestive things that's in place now, if we could come up with a plan and move that forward, there's probably going to be a lot of grant money available to develop that, because as everyone knows, the tipping fees are going through the roof, and that's a serious problem for the state of New England. So that is an example. If we have more of a plan, it may help us with the grants and offset some of these costs that we can move forward. But overall, it was a great presentation. I appreciate the level of detail, and thank you all for your efforts on informing the council on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor
I just
Franco?
had one comment. As I listen to the discussion, in particular when I think about the solar panels, I think the emphasis that we really need to point at over the next bunch of years, if we haven't been pointing at it before, is partnerships. Partnerships. We've recently had some experience with solar panels, and we had a nice discussion with Groton Utilities and Eversource, we the task force, looking at the tension in the system. You see, if everybody puts up solar panels and/or charges up their batteries with solar panels and runs it, where's Eversource in the infrastructure in the whole game? Number one. Number two, if everybody puts up the solar panels, turns out in some areas, we're thinking about Fisher's Island and a few other spots, the grid can't handle it. So if you want, you've got to get to give, and that all means partnership. And it can't be one guy's the good guy and one guy's the bad guy, so often we see it. We've got to work on this together, all of us. So I really think besides the resolution, which we pointed out for you a few years ago, you want to add to that the comment, in partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Councilor Franco?
Thank you. Now that we have a position with a director that does sustainability, and it was in your presentation, my question is, where do you see your committee, and what do you see your committee doing in the future?
Well, let me take a crack at that, Counselor. We long felt that the town needed to have staff on board to do much of this work. And you have now done that. You made available appropriation, and you have directed the staff to hire Megan. And so I think that's exactly what we had expected and hoped you would do, and you've done it. Just so it's clear, Megan does not report to us. Megan reports to the Director of Planning, and the Director of Planning reports to the Town Manager. And that is exactly how we thought that should happen. And so when I asked the question here about our future, I'm thinking, what can we do as an advisory board or a task force or a commission or something or other that really enhances what Megan and the entire town government is trying to do. And so I hope that may help you understand that. And so why we asked the question, I mean, we can dream up some ideas, but I think it's really important that we hear some response from the town council, because this was your idea to begin with. And I think you made a good choice, but I think we need to have a robust conversation about it. Anybody else want to take that hot seat?
Partnership.
Well, that is, you went basically to where I was thinking, that we have a director, and as a council, when we need advice or advisory, I think the director would come to us on the most part and give us the advice we were going to be trying to seek and look for. So that's what I'm questioning. What is going to be the role of this committee now that we have this position that will be probably most likely advising the council? So that's basically where I'm standing, like wondering what your role is going to be. And also with many of the things that are mentioned, I also agree that planning and zoning play a huge role in the future in what they want to do with new buildings and new houses that maybe are destroyed by storms and such and may need to be rebuilt, and how they do their regulations. So that's where I'm sort of now wondering, where do we stand right now with this task force and in relation to our director and our council? So I'm very curious as to what you had to, you answered my question, but I don't really have a direction right now to know where you're going with it. So I guess as the council, we'll have to ponder this and figure out how to give you the direction you may seek. But thank you for coming in and giving us an update on what you've been doing and where you think you're going in the future. Thank you.
Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is directed to Megan. I know we just approved the grant to you, but I'm not going to realize I didn't know what questions I should have been asking when we were having that conversation, which is common, and we just fortunately have this opportunity to re-ask the question again. But we have a really good list here. Is this what you're going to do in that grant? Or are these things that you could look at in that grant?
Absolutely. I'm squinting my eyes.
Well,
I saw Zell's slide, but I didn't get a copy of them before.
It's the page 6.
It's got a page number on it.
Adaptation activities. So watershed management, waterfowl development, planning and zoning building code, major disaster planning partners, sea level rise, storm events, human health. Yes. These are, major adaptation activities, major needs of the community. When I talk about broad, whole scale, why we need $285,000 to do a climate plan, it's because we're talking about big things like this.
Okay.
So yes, these sorts of high-level things will directly feed into the climate action plan, development of the goals, priority actions, kind of hashing out with all of these issues to tackle what do we need to do and how are we going to do it.
So you could take this almost as the outline of your work over the next year and a half and flush these out with recommendations and ideas incorporated into what you're going to do with the grant. Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's definitely lots of things here that when we put together the structure of how we're going to develop this plan, you'll be seeing these things again.
See all those things. All right. No, I think that's great. I mean, I don't know what the future of your group is other than sort of an advisory group, but I think the two things just seem to kind of merge together. I'll use Frank's words of the partnership, that this is a good action plan to put into an action plan that you're going to be giving us a bunch of actions on. So I think that's great, and I look forward to seeing some recommendations, or at least outlines of things that we should be thinking about, and you're able to put some money behind it and energy. I think it's a good use of it, so, okay, great.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your update.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could we have a 5-minute recess?
Sure. Council will stand in recess at 8:08.
Doesn't matter.
I know.
My water broke out of nowhere. Which is like 10% chance of doing.
We're going in.
So,
I was talking to. I was a huge project. She goes, oh, I went, oh, I know what that means.
The council's back from recess at 8:23. And we're on to property reuse evaluation policy. Manager Burt, do you have some background?
Sure. I think as everyone's aware, if you look at page 89, back in 2021, the town council had worked on revising the existing one-page document. Once, that was right at the end of the term, so it was basically left off. And then at the beginning, I think it was February of this last term in 22, the Property Reuse Committee was formed, and recently they provided a draft of their work for a new policy. So that's basically where we're at.
Okay. Councilor Kasiri?
I'd like to put a motion on the floor to adopt the 2021 Town Council draft policy.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilor Kasiri and a second by Jones.
I'll make a motion to approve the PRUC draft policy.
All right. I knew this was going to happen.
I'll second it.
Hold on. I knew this was going to happen, so I checked Robert's rules. I couldn't find anything definitive in here, but John told me that our attorneys have an opinion on it, so if you...
And that's come up before. Remember, it has to be in that same vein. You're changing, like the item you're working on. So you have to turn, and we've talked about this before here, you have to turn one down before you then would pick up the other.
I have a point of information.
Hold on.
This
So,
seems very staged to me.
okay.
Very staged. I'd like a recess to discuss this.
That's not in order.
Well, I
So,
think this is out of order, actually, because it wasn't even stated.
Counselor Bordelon,
Well, listen,
you
it was
don't
not
have the
even
floor.
stated.
Counselor Bordelon, you do not have the
I
floor.
understand I don't have the floor, but you
So
take the
that means you
floor.
cannot speak.
I understand that, but
You
it
do
wasn't
not
even
have the
stated
floor.
how this was going to be as a proper use committee document. It was referral that I sent because it was doing nothing.
Counselor Bordelon, this has nothing to do with the discussion that
It
we
does
are
have
having
to do
right
with
now.
discussion. Because I saw
The
you talk to
motion is
John
out of
Burt
order.
about the thing before, because you were waiting on this. It's
Excuse
obvious
me?
it's staged.
Excuse me?
Run your process.
Excuse me?
Run the process.
I talked to John Burt about whether this motion is in order. I knew both motions would come at the same time. We have, the first motion that goes on the floor, that one has to be voted and acted upon before we can vote on the second motion.
Yeah.
And,
That's
just
not my
because-
opinion, that's from the attorney.
Yeah.
And I asked about it.
Great.
I'm
Okay.
just asking for fair clarification why that is, because we often put multiple motions
Yeah, this is
at the
staged.
same, please, let me finish.
Staged.
So I just would like to hear what the attorney said,
This
because
is
it
not
doesn't
my
make sense.
opinion. This is the
They've
attorney.
actually said this to here into the council prior to. It has to be in the same vein on this. You can amend the item, what you can't do is introduce in the middle of a whole new item.
Why is it written this way?
But,
Pardon me.
yeah. So they're two different items. They're not in the same, you're not amending the first item by changing it, or we want to make it 5 years, we want to, whatever, whatever type of thing you're doing. It's a totally different item. You have to turn down the first mainstream thing first, we're going to the other one.
No.
Thank
Counselor
you.
Westervelt has the floor.
I relinquish.
Thank you. Counselor Bordelon.
Why is it written this way? It makes no sense. Other agenda items that we have, you don't have to give either or this or that. It shouldn't be written this way. So why are we running it this way? Why are we not running it like other council motions that we've done, where we had multiple motions on the floor, or we're just proposing it? The way this is set up is automatically setting it up in a way that approve 2021. That wasn't what we were tasked to do. The referral that I had sent was when it was doing nothing on the heels of the Mystic Oral School, where overwhelmingly the community spoke passionately, some say aggressively, because that's what they like to say, but passionately about the concerns of our town and its well-being and process for a well-developed plan, because people with criminal backgrounds and things written that were not being done, no background checks, nothing. I made the referral in good faith after that, because this one-page document from 2021, which I was a part of, was not strong enough then, and I had asked, could we make it stronger? And I got nowhere. So I made the referral. So why is this platform set up the way it is tonight, unlike any other referral item that comes before us?
First of all.
Because I just feel like it's staged.
First of all, if you remember, 2021 was in response. That was the revision where they incorporated new things. So just to be clear, that was a revision after the comments. The council tried to incorporate the comments at that time. However, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, due to comments we've received on where people from earlier, that last discussion, I was directed to put both on the agenda and people could discuss them both. The mayor.
Oh, the mayor. So, it would be nice if before the meeting you preface all these details and documents and actually give credit where credit is due to people who are up here, because constantly we're criticized. Oh, do not say things bad about the staff or be disrespectful. But the disrespect that other folks get up here is it's not mutually exclusive. This document that was put up there in 2021 was not a document that had any teeth. At that same time, I was fighting to keep my seat, and I did not support that document, and I didn't have the votes to make the changes. So just to say that came on the heels of Mystic Oral School, if you think that was what the people asked for, we have bigger problems here, because that's not in fact what they asked. So we, in good faith, and a referral I made, and Councilor McBride chaired it, thanks to the mayor who requested that we could have the meeting, we made our best effort to bring in all of the boards in to make sure that we had a well-vetted document. The other one, the one page, did not include planning and zoning, wetlands, and everybody else. We worked together collaboratively over many weeks. And I even heard you say, John, you thought that the document looked pretty good from your understanding, minus Appendix A. Is that correct? That's what you said?
I said that the base document was heading in the right direction, though some of the things I asked for didn't get incorporated. However, let me go back again. 2021 did have things on like the Planning and Zoning Commission, that kind of thing. So you're still skipping over the one. And again, you should direct your comments. Please direct your comments to the mayor. That wasn't my 3-pager. That was the council's work, not my work, not staff work. That was council changes. So all these questions should be directed towards the mayor.
What I'm saying is in 2021, those folks that were making decisions were not brought around the table. Like tonight, P&Z had a hearing during a council meeting, not transparent government. How is the council who's making votes know exactly what's going on in our town when there's another meeting happening? We are still residents first before elected officials. We worked together as a collaborative team and brought them to the table to discuss what they thought that should be in this document. After hearing what we didn't have, looking at surrounding towns. And the way it's presented tonight doesn't even give it the full merit. The way it's presented tonight is if nothing was even done. And that's a huge disrespect to the people who put the work in, and then to say now we have to coordinate now, and the way this vote is set up, it's staged.
Point of information.
Thank you. Sure.
Our option 2 for tonight is in fact to approve the 2021 Town Council draft policy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Also, another point of information.
Sure.
The 2021 Town Council draft policy is in fact 3 pages, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess I'll speak here. I've read both documents. I actually think both documents are good documents. They're sufficient. They've got a lot of things in there that improve on what we currently have. This one that came from the PRUC, I watched a lot of their meetings going back. I've read their document. They put a lot of good work in. They put a lot of good things in, and I can actually support this document. The one from 2021 that came from the town council, as the manager alluded to, that did not come from the town staff, that came from the town council. We worked over many meetings to put that document together, and I was on that council at that time. I can also support that document. From my perspective, I hear the Planning and Development Services, Department of Planning and Development Services has delayed a lot of their efforts in marketing our properties because this has been delayed. And I think that it was delayed for
Point of
good
order.
reason. I have.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
I think that's unfair to say that they could not still be showing, that it was stated that they could still show the properties. It takes years to get to the final document.
That's not a
That's
point
just
of
not
order.
fair to say. It's
That's
just-
not a point of order.
It is a point of order because what you're saying is not true. That's my point of order.
The Planning and Development Service, Department of Planning and Development came here and told us that.
Does that mean that that's true?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And-
what it
and So
means.
the town manager, can you confirm that? That we couldn't show properties and continue to market our properties?
They came here and told us that.
That doesn't, that
Yes,
sounds.
they
it was
tell the
stated
truth.
that that could still be done.
You do not have the floor.
That was a choice.
You do not have the
So you
floor.
should say they chose.
You do not have the floor.
That's my point of order.
You do not have the floor.
It should say you chose.
You do not have the
I
floor.
understand that, but I just
Council
ask
Borderline,
that you say
then why are you
correct
speaking?
wording.
If you know you don't have the
Because it's
floor, then why?
unfair to say
Council Borderline,
unsafe
you are
things.
out of order.
That's great. You're out of order by saying they chose to wait. Is that's true? correct?
Mayor, I'll call a point of order now.
What's your point of order?
The decorum is just
I agree.
absolutely disgusting.
I agree.
Council Borderline, you cannot speak when you do not have the floor. These are the rules of the council, and they must be
Then
enforced.
speak the truth.
That's it.
Speak the truth.
The truth is, Department of
chose.
Planning and
They could have
Development
continued.
came here and told us
They
that.
chose.
So you speak the truth.
They chose. Just say they chose. That's all.
This is not your turn to speak.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
this dress rehearsal is just amazing.
Point of order,
What's your point of order?
decorum.
Council Bordelon, you're out of order. Do not speak when you do not have the floor. Now, if I can finish what I was trying to say, okay? I will support whichever document can get the support of the council, okay? This is time. We have spent time on this. This is coming from the old council to this council. This is a 2-year process, and we need to finish this process so that we can market our properties and get them sold, okay? From my perspective, if there's one of these documents that cannot get votes and another that can, I will be voting for the one that can get the votes.
Wow.
As everyone should know, if these votes fail, then it will take months to even get this back onto our agenda, and I do not want to risk that as well. Councilor McBride?
Thank you. No comments with regards to the process. I'm more focused on the votes and making this move forward so the administration can do their job. But I'm confused because in 2021, this council established a committee to meet and review because it was deemed that that 3-pager didn't have sufficient information in it that the public wanted for full transparency and for additional information. So this committee, went through the work, whatever it is. It was a very involved process. I mean, it wasn't, I can tell you I chaired the committee, but I am not an expert at this. So we made sure we brought in experts from Planning and Zoning Commission, from the Conservation Commission, from the Housing Authority. We had a member from the Historic Commission. We had an expert who has vast experience in the RFP process. And this document was vetted out through this entire process to do what the town wanted in terms of more transparency.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
The motion on the floor is about the 2021. 2021. It's not about the current one that was done by the PRUC. And also, I would like to notate, if we're working on information being correct, the council did not send this to the PRUC, this PRUC committee. The mayor did, and the council did not vote on it.
Councilor McBride, you're in order. You have the floor.
Thank you. As I was saying, what I was trying to explain was the reason for this new refined process is because the 2021 process was not sufficient enough to be fully transparent and involve the community. That's why, in my opinion, the 2021 document, although it was a start, it was not what the community wanted. It was not fully transparent. It did not involve the community in all the decisions that needed to be made. That's why I cannot support the 2021 document. The one that this committee put together is much more refined, has much more detail. So I can't support the 2021 document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Westervelt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was my understanding, and I am directing this towards the 2021 document, it was my understanding that the PRUC was seated to basically bolster what was started, to make it a stronger document, to protect the town from some of the things that had happened in the past. I believe the hundreds of volunteer man-hours that were spent was to make this document something that we could use, we could make decisions based on it. It was strong enough to make sure that we had responsible developers coming in or responsible marketing for our properties. I don't believe whether, I don't believe that this will affect our ability to market our properties. I just think that the strength of the PRUC document exceeds what the 2021 document was, which was weaker and not favored by the public. So I cannot support the 2021 document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Franco?
Thank you. I was on the previous council and helped craft the 2021 policy. I brought this also to people that lived near Municipal Oral School who were on the MOSA committee and had items put in that were requested from them. There were many things, many discussions that were had, and also I was in support of the 2021 policy, and I've watched numerous of the meetings from the new PRUC committee, and I think the direction they were going in is not the direction I think would be the best for the town, and in relation to the policy for us selling properties or disposing of properties. So I will be supporting the 2021 policy. And as I have stated, and I will state once again, the council did not vote to have a task force or a committee look at this. This was the mayor that sent it to them. I was not in favor of that. And I think we've waited long enough, and I would like to have the vote, and I will be supporting the 2021. And let me just ask for clarification, Town Manager, Mr. Birch, if this does not pass and the PRUC does not pass, will it revert back to the original?
Well, the original is already in place, so it would remain the original.
Right. So thank you.
Councilor Bordelon?
I mean, why are we voting on something that's already in place? That's my first question.
No, it's not in place.
The 2021 is not in place?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I'm confused, like, because that document was, as a person who sat on that council and knew that it did not have enough teeth, people that were up here that ran and said, oh, the election had more to do with the Mystic Oral School and that they now too agree that it was a bad decision. These are the changes that this committee looked at, ways to make it stronger. How now are we going to revert back to a document that sat, we have not even, nobody came before us and sent one question, one idea, one revisement. There's not even a compromise up here of a different draft or a cut to anything. Just simply, let's go with 2021. We have newly elected people up here that were not part of 2021. You're okay with that document? We haven't even discussed that document as a full council. We haven't, tonight, we are not even going line by line to make sure what we're doing. How are we voting up or down something when we don't even have workshops at the council where we're time to go over a properly vetted document? The group was formed, a referral was made, And we sat down and did the work, and we included everybody. It was open, it was transparent, there was public comment, and anybody and any one of you from the council were welcome and allowed to speak unlimitedly, unlike some other committees that we have on the council, where there's no comment allowed. There's been no emails, so if you didn't feel comfortable coming and talk there, because in 2021, this council was not moving in the greatest direction, in my opinion. At that time, I was being boxed out, and I didn't have a voice
Point of order.
for the document. So to say in 2021,
What's your point of order?
Decorum.
Council Bordelon, it's about the document, not the election.
sure, I'm talking about 2021 and Mystic Oral School, and it was stated by people up here on this council that Mystic Oral School election, that was what it was based off of. Some even said that's how McBride got his seat up here. So now we're changing
Point of order.
tunes and
Point of order.
moving in a direction where we're not listening to our
What's your
community.
Point of
point of
order.
order? What's your point of
You're not
order?
supposed to be mentioning other counselors in your debate directly.
That's not true.
Council Bordelon, please keep your discussion to the proper,
I am.
the
It was
document.
2021, and we all ran to serve our community. And Mystic Oral School was one of the number one items up there. And we said in good faith that we'd make a decision. And we didn't say we were going to put forward the 2021 document. Did you say that? No, I didn't. I said I was going to seek a plan in which we are going to work collaboratively, which in fact did not happen, except with the people that were on it. So it's like tonight, the way this is worded, and you threw the 20, and now they're saying the mayor did that. It's as if it was already dead in the water before we arrived. And it just shows no good faith effort, no intent, not even a recommendation or a cut. If you didn't like it, what didn't you like? I'd love to hear that today. Not one person has anything to say about it. Just I'm going to go with the 2021. Not that I didn't like paragraph B or A or C or 1. Today we get 2 chances to speak, no proper dialogue, and it's done at a time when we don't have public comment. So next Monday we have public comment at the next meeting, and I hope people come out. Thank you.
Time is
Point of
expired.
information.
Sure.
Just to clarify, Mr. Burt, this policy was supposed to be targeted for the sale of town-owned properties, correct?
I'd have to ask the mayor what he actually, he's the one that created, I don't know offhand what he exactly said.
What does the policy have jurisdiction over?
Oh, yeah, just town-owned properties, though it has a process, both the 3-pager and the PRUC one for if we teamed up with something similar to the Mystic Ed Center.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, I guess I'll speak for myself. I do like the PRUC draft policy. I think it's a good policy. But like I said in my last time speaking, if there's 4 counselors here who want to pass that PRUC draft policy, I'll gladly be the 5th vote to put that over. We cannot afford to spend more time making this decision. The last council spent a lot of time putting this document together. This council spent a lot of time working on this, not us working on it, but through the PRUC, and they did all that work. So we have 2 options here. We have the PRUC draft policy, we have the previous council's draft policy, and we can move with either one. What I don't want to do is have both of them fail today, and then we have no policy. We came here as a council, we took this up and we said we would make a policy. There's 8 counselors here. A 4 and 4, to me, is a mistake. Because we will have no policy, and it will take months. It will take 6 months to get this even on our agenda again, unless 6 counselors can agree to put this back on the agenda. And from what I'm seeing, we can't even get 5 to agree. So from my perspective, if there's 4 counselors that agree on a policy, I will support that policy. I like both policies. They're both good policies. They both took a lot of work to put together, and I will support either one. Simple as that.
Information.
Sure.
So my understanding, if I'm correct, my question, we didn't hold up looking for development while this one from 2021 sat, so why now are we saying that the property use one held anything up? I'm confused. Because it didn't hold anything up, so I don't understand how that, I mean, that's the leverage word, so I'm confused. The 2021 policy that sat did not hold up the town from continuing to develop. Actually, they sold more property since then.
Okay.
So I'm confused, I'm just asking.
Do you want the answer?
for-
Okay.
Yeah, the question is why this one's holding up but not
Okay.
the other, because we can still move forward.
I'll tell you.
That's-
When the last council was working on their draft policy, their direction to the planning, the planning department was to continue doing what they were doing then, and we would just pass what we pass when we pass, and then it will be implemented. This council made the decision that while we were working on what we're working on, we will pause what they're doing, and we will wait for this to pass so that then, when it comes into place, everything going forward will be under this plan and not a previous plan. It's just a council decision.
Yeah, I guess if that's your answer, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, so then why, if you were gonna pass the 2021, why'd you waste our time? I feel like you held the time up.
Point of order.
Why would I? I'm not going to pass anything. The
Point
council
of
will pass
order.
something.
I would think that you'd take your own
Point
stance
of
on the
order.
vote. So,
I can't pass
Point of
anything,
order.
and neither can any councilor alone pass anything. What's your point of order?
That's not a informational question, and it's more of a debate and discussion than an informational question.
Council Bordelon, are you going to finish your second time?
Yeah, I basically feel that we were tasked to do something. We did the work. We didn't have to hold anything up. We said at the meeting, Councilor McBride spoke and said, it takes a long time to get to a final draft for someone that be fully vetted, continue to show properties and sell the town. That's not the intention. So if a few councilors felt that way, that's one way. I feel that we put in the work, we did the time. If we were just gonna come, you should have came to the meeting of the Property Use Committee and looked us all in the face and said, we're just gonna vote in the 2021. That's our comment. But instead, you did nothing. No one came, no one questioned, no one asked. You continued us forward to work on something that was a referral, and instead, you just wanted to go with the 2021. We came for updates. No one again said anything. No one's came, no one sent emails, nothing directed through the mayor, the town manager, nothing. And then today, we're tasked with this draft here of go with 2021 or go with this. Mystic Oral School overwhelmingly was a factor. People wanted something, and that document that was there is not enough to properly run a town in a way that's open and transparent government. After talking to Groton Housing Authority, the scoring sheets and why they weren't selected, we didn't find out until after the fact. That form does not address all of those issues. It does not address the fact that planning and zoning don't know about things until after this council and economic development vote on things, and then they're given the garbage to try to fix after. Like the Mystic Oral School, trying to change zones before you ask the zoning. That's why this document, the property use document, is a strong document that would address all those. Anyone who wouldn't want that is not looking for open and transparent government. I was part of the 2021 vote on that paper. That's all we could get through. There was no large due diligence on that. It was simple emails back and forth with edits and direction from the town. It wasn't solely from the council. And the new councilors up here that got elected had a chance to make change to that document, and I encourage you guys to do some work. You're gonna rubber stamp something we did from 2021 when it was a big fallout up in this council from the Municipal Oral School? You think that's a strong document to send forward from that previous council? I would encourage you otherwise. That's not what the community, that's not what I heard from the constituents. Just like data centers, Mystic Oral School, all things underserved and not properly developed processes, background checks. I was floored when I asked the town manager at the first time in the meeting, had you guys done background checks? They said no. And at that time, I pulled my name off of that Mystic Oral School. Because I just assumed, as a new person up here, that we were doing that, and we weren't. Now we're catching up to do it. This document brings all the stakeholders around, and it should be something that this council wants for the sake of our community.
Thank you.
Or bring an amendment forward
Thank you.
and cut out a paragraph. Where's the
you.
middle ground up here?
Time
There's
has
not
expired.
one, and I'm not surprised.
Time has expired.
Point of
Point of
information.
information? Oh.
Thank you. Just to clarify, because there seems to be some confusion, there are actually technically three policies that we're speaking about right now. There's an existing policy. The 2021 Town Council draft policy was never voted upon, and then there's the Property Reuse Committee. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Point of information?
Sure.
I'm just curious because I do not remember, at which town council meeting did we direct planning and development to stop marketing?
We'd have to go back and check.
There was not.
But there was long-standing direction from the council. I mean, I don't know what the first meeting was, but they've come in front of us again, and that direction was stated, and no counselors said they wanted to change that direction.
Councilor McBride, point of order. Councilor McBride did state such that.
Okay, we need five
Point of
counselors.
order.
We need five counselors to change direction.
Say truthful things. Councilor McBride stated.
Point of order.
They can continue.
The true thing is that the council
Point of order.
Councilor Franco, what's your point of order?
People are speaking when they don't have the floor and you have not recognized them.
Okay, to answer your question, Councilor Westervelt, the council gave direction to the Planning and Development, Department of Planning and Development, that we wanted to pause the marketing of the properties until we sorted this out. They have come through our entire term back, and every time they come in front of us, they have stated that they're waiting for us to do this. The council, 5 counselors have not chosen to change that direction, so that is why it was the way it was. It's very simple. Councilor McBride.
Thank you. I'm just really confused, and I want to state for the record, so everyone's aware, the beginning document that the PRUC committee used was the 2021 document. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware, that was our beginning basis point. We started with that document, and then, as we've mentioned before, we brought in the experts in the various areas, Historic Commission, Conservation Commission, Housing Authority, Planning and Zoning, EDC even commented. So we began with that document, and maybe that document was a C+ or a B. All we did was make the changes that the experts, in my opinion, thought the changes should be made to make the document better. So I'm just surprised that we're having this much difficulty, because all we did was make a document better based upon what the experts wanted and based upon what the community wanted. So I'm just really confused on why this is so difficult, because the beginning document was the 2021 document. All we did was do what everybody else does throughout life. We made an improvement on a document, and here we are trying to bring it forward. So I'm just mystified that we're having this much difficulty. But I can't support the 2021, and again, it's because that's our starting point. We enhanced it based upon the expertise of opinions of others, and I'm going to be supporting the other document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jacome.
Thank you, Mayor. To the town manager, is the Mystic Oral School not state property?
Correct, it's state property.
So the talking point that everybody's constantly used, that we did learn, yes, we learned some things, but it's not town-owned property. For me, that's my understanding. Excuse me, I have the floor. And then the second one is things that we learned throughout going through the process of the Mystic Oral School. Were those incorporated into this 2021 draft?
Well, some of them, I'll say then. But it was, many of the, I think the key ones were included, but certainly there's a lot more included through the new policy.
Before I was on the council, my understanding is that the PRUC was an opportunity to review the town-owned and the reuse evaluation, right? For them to review, it still comes to the council. Remember, everything that's brought to this council is a recommendation, and that we have the opportunity to put amendments and options both on, that are on and not on the agenda. When the PRUC came to the council, I think we did give feedback. I watched all your meetings. Some of them were included, were not included. The topic that we wanted to reach out is we didn't have to reach out because we did give our feedback there. And it is our choice here as a council, as me as an individual, and what I support and what I think is best for the community. The PRUC draft policy, for example, for me, is just too dense, and it's just lined with a bunch of red tape that I think is going to dissuade developers. Obviously, we need to do our due diligence in who's coming in here. We need to vet them, just in a process like that, but I just think it's too thick for me. So I will be supporting the 2021 Town Council draft. For me, it's something I can support. I think it's digestible. I think it's something that a majority of the council can support, because it doesn't even look like we can get a consensus here. And it's something that both, I think, the council and that the staff have supported when it first came through the original previous council. So that is where I stand. Thank you.
Councilor Franco?
Thank you. I think the previous counselor said it very eloquently. I also recall PRUC committee coming to the council and us giving feedback. And a lot of the feedback that I heard from our council given to them was not actually taken up into this document. They were given a 3-page document, and I think it's now 20 pages. I believe there's a lot of red tape. I believe there's things in here that will make it very difficult to do much of anything for business with developers.
Point of order.
I've watched the meetings.
What's your point of order?
Implying intent, red tape, I just think it's, like, that's just implying intent, that was not the intention
The intention of what?
of the draft document.
She's stating her opinion on the document.
I was point of order for comments and saying that there's a bunch of red tape in this is, I think, out of line as well,
That's
to the
her.
other people who served on this committee, so.
I'm sorry, but her opinion on this document is that it's red tape. Your opinion on the other document is that it had no teeth, but you felt that was in order.
Well,
And you
I'm
feel
just-
like
I'm
her
just giving it right
opinion is
back.
out of order.
Thank you.
Councilor Franklin, you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank
trying to be recognized here.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Audience members should not be yelling out during a meeting.
Mayor, how do we recognize someone from the audience?
I'm sorry, I'm ruling on a point of order. Those okay. If a counselor has a turn to speak and they wish to yield that turn to speak, they can do so. But unless a counselor up here yields a turn to speak to an audience member, then there's no option for that. Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Thank you. I gave my feedback at the town council meeting. When they invited us to come to their meeting, I have said, and I have repeatedly said at the council, that I would be doing it publicly at the town council. I would not be sending emails to a committee telling them any kind of changes or what I would like them to do, because I think that's a violation of FOI, doing business behind closed doors. So I gave my feedback at that meeting, and I do not see where they've taken
Point
up
of
the
order.
council recommendations.
What's your point of order?
Implying that we were going to ask for things that are not FOIable, they would go through the town manager and properly be put into our agenda, like everything else is usually. That's how we go through. We usually send it to the town manager and then he has it dispersed. So it would be put up for.
That is
full-
not
yeah, yeah.
a
Councilor
point of order.
Bordelon, she's just stating her opinion on the
She said she wasn't
document.
going to send it because it wouldn't be FOIable and implying that we were not going to be following FOI standards. So I just wanted to make sure that was
That's
clear.
not a point of order. That's not a point of order.
Okay.
Well, I find this.
Councilor Franco, you have the floor.
Let me ask the town manager. Mr. Manager, if I send what I want them to change in this document by emails, would that be doing business behind closed doors and not transparent at a meeting for the community?
It needs to be done here. You can't have more than, you can't hit a quorum of the council, so you'd want to do it through this body, not through the email.
Thank you. I appreciate your point of information.
Because you're gonna vote on it later. That's why you don't make comments at that earlier stage. You can't have you can't have a majority of a council at a committee meeting to making, that's well known. It's just how it works.
Councilor Franco, you have a minute and a half left.
Thank you. So there's been numerous interruptions, so I don't even know where I was. So I'm just going to say I've made my recommendations. I didn't see them taken up in here. I heard other council recommendations. I didn't see them taken up in here. So I will be going with the 2021 document that I helped make changes to and did a lot of work on as well. Talking to citizens and of such. I also think there were things that in this committee that having certain people on here that will be making decisions after the fact and voting on them and having them in these certain committees that they've tried to create with the PRUC is a huge issue. And so I will be sticking with the 2021, and I think it represents our community and will be the best for us. Thank you.
Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be echoing the comments by Counselor Jacome. I thought they expressed many of the same feelings that I had, and also the expressions of Counselor Franco. So I will also be supporting the 2021 Town Council draft policy. Thank you.
Point of information.
What's your point of information?
To the town manager, wasn't this the original document that started before it even got to 3 pages that you, me, and Patrice Granatowski sat around the table, and it was talking about the disposal of town properties because there was no process at that time when you had come on board? That started off, it was smaller than this. This is the same.
I don't recall that, but the council made the official changes.
Right, but it started off with the disposal of town-owned property. There was no process. When a school turned over a building, we sat at your office.
Oh, that's totally different than this, though. That's more, what's the process for the Board of Ed to turn over to? That was a totally different process. That has nothing to do with this.
Start of this.
No, it wasn't, no. Not from my perspective anyways.
Okay, all right, but I remember the meeting, so.
Yeah, so do I, now that you say it.
Counselor Westervelt?
Mr. Mayor, do I have another turn to speak?
Sure do.
I'll yield my time to
Mr. Town Manager, you said I could be recognized.
Jen.
Point of order.
I yield my time to ex-councilwoman.
I have a point of
Sir.
order first.
What's your point of order?
The audience members should not be shouting out during a meeting.
She can't hear, so you have to wait.
What you are all forgetting is in between 21, which failed us miserably.
You get a mic, Jen. Just wait till she gets up.
Can you roll on my point of order first, please?
Okay. If you are not have the floor, that counts for counselors and audience members, please do not speak unless you have the floor.
So how can one be recognized from the audience? What would you like them to do?
Raise their hand.
I will be very quick.
Just 1 second, Jen.
3 minutes.
Is she clear?
I have a point of information.
Clear, you got 3 minutes.
All right,
I have a point
would just like to remind you something which you seem to have forgotten, which is hundreds of citizens have appeared before you and organized a campaign to protest domestic oral school and what happened there. That was your previous process, whatever you think it was, and 2021. They both failed us miserably. The citizens spoke for 2 years or 3 years against this. And this is why 2023 was created. And you all now want to go back to a process which completely failed us and which citizens have spent an enormous amount of time and energy coming in to tell you that we didn't want that anymore, that we wanted something more transparent, something which would work for the community, and now you're going to go back to a failed process? The citizens have spoken here. It's not just you 9. What are you thinking?
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
I just want to make it clear, we never use the 21 policy. It's never been used.
That's correct.
I yield back the time.
I guess someone else gets-
Any further discussion? All right, I'm seeing
We
no,
have somebody in the audience with their hand up.
if no counselor,
Point of
Do I
order.
have time left on?
no, it has to be one person.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Audience members are continuing to shout
As
out
well as
without
counselors.
having the floor.
If you do not
Thank
have
you.
the floor, please do not speak.
Is it a point of information?
What's your point of
It
information?
does state that time can be split between only one counselor. Can you just double verify that?
Yes, I've read it. Yes. All right. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
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 Abstentions? Okay, carries 5 in favor, 3 opposed. McBride, Bordelon, Westervelt, 0 abstaining.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn by Counselor Bordelon, a second by Counselor Westervelt. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Aye.
Fails 3 in favor, McBride, Bordelon, Westervelt, 5 opposed, 0 abstaining. We are on to the opioid crisis education program.
Can we have a recess, please?
Sure, we'll stand in
All right,
recess at
thank you.
9:08.
Thank you.
on to the opioid crisis education program. Councilor Kasiri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I actually, just to give a little background, I made this a referral around the time that I made the referral for the substance abuse social worker, which we as a council adopted with the budget this year for a second social worker. So that was great. So I made this referral because in our discussions about the opioid crisis, I realized that one of our biggest downfalls in the discussion of how to fix the crisis is how little town councilors knew about the services available to the community. If community leaders know little about services, about the services that are available to the public, then it is likely that our community may be struggling on how to obtain information about seeking help for themselves, family, or loved ones. I believe that the town can achieve a minimal cost initiative to advertise what services are available to the community to get help, to prevent addiction, and to help others utilizing the tools already available to us, which is our social media platforms, GMTV, postings at our town buildings and events, and perhaps if, planning wanted to get local businesses involved in this campaign, maybe that's something that we could look into as well. But a few examples that I came up with is that many people do not know how to use 211. There could be social media posts or GMTV videos about how to use 211 and what 211 is specifically for and what services that you could seek for. Many people do not understand that we even do a drug take-back program. A simple video or social media post on why we remove the temptation of unwanted prescription medications from homes could be educational and vital in the prevention of an addiction. Some people may not want to utilize 211 for services. A parent may want to vet a program themselves that they want to utilize. So we could provide a list of services in town buildings, on social media, on our town website, and other means. And this will give the public a much better idea of what programs are available and perhaps different descriptions of what each service can provide. And my hope is that the community stakeholders such as Community Speaks Out, SCAD, CARES, Stonington Institute, really any of our agencies that are available to us will also be able to participate in this conversation, provide vital tips and initiative ideas so that we can collaborate to produce a successful and life-saving opioid crisis education program for the town of Groton. And I had a brief little chat with the fire chief Paquonic Bridge before our town council meeting started, and he said that he would be willing to contribute to this as well. So I have a motion prepared, so if this is something that the council is interested in, I would just love to hear your feedback.
Okay. Well, thank you for the work that you did on this.
Thank you.
And the update. Is there any, Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Kasiri. I think it's a great idea. I think this is actually a question for the town manager. I know we have our high school students put on the Recovery Fest and really do pull together a great list of resources. And Councilor Kasiri mentioned here the town website. I think it might be a good idea to have a resource page on the town website that listed all of our different organizations, contact information, and services that they offer, because we do seem to have a really kind of scattered, like many of the programs down here, they're regional or they come from different places. So I think pulling all that information that they've done the last 2 years, pull it together, and just, at least to start this process, is build a page. That way we have someplace to direct people to.
Yeah.
And everything is there, contact information, links, that kind of thing. I think would be a great resource, at least to start the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And Recovery Fest is really one of the things that I was thinking about when making this referral,
Yeah.
because we go to Recovery Fest and we learn about all of these different programs, and some of them are throughout the state, but parents may be willing to travel, if they're seeking substance abuse treatment. So I think having a resource that our residents can access all of those different agencies would be great.
Yeah, and then that gives our social media a place to anchor to. Whatever we do is on Facebook, we just send them to that page, and then we can kind of build from there and get out. But
And that'd be easy enough to do, too.
Yeah, it'd be easy enough to do, and those kids have done a fantastic job with Recovery Fest, and so the information is already here. We just need to kind of pull it all together into one place. So, great, thank you.
Council Bordelon?
I mean, it's no brainer. I mean, I think access to vital services is important. It's come up many times, not just the opioid, it's been food hunger and access to food. I have stated to John that there's people calling and they have to wait for an appointment. It's where the town chooses to put their interests. Sometimes our emergency page doesn't have anything on it until way after the fact. People check our Facebook page. So if we're going to do this, I think we need to do it, and we need to do it with all of our services. And there is maybe there's not a position or something, I don't know, but human services in most towns have accessibility to this, because usually hunger and poverty are linked to drugs and alcohol and addiction and a lot of other homelessness that lead to these things sometimes. And that is a great hub, is starting with our human service department for where people go to seek food. When you go to the Pocket Hub Neighborhood Center, they have flyers and pamphlets. When you look at other towns, the stuff is already posted. I'm excited to see this. I hope it goes through. I have submitted things before and told that they would be. And, you know, I think it's a no-brainer, the 211 and the accessibility. I think it should be townwide also with the schools. A lot of towns like New London and stuff put this out. So it's where the towns choose to put it. Every time we come to a budget session, outside resources is overwhelmingly one of the ones people want to cut. And unfortunately, we do not have a shelter in this town. We don't have a lot of accessibility. And as they looked at climate change and other things and resources with people with addiction, homelessness, and needing, needing a cool place to cool off or whatever, a lot of people don't seek certain places like the police station to sit in the lobby to cool off because maybe they have a drug addiction problem, like an opioid crisis or something like that. We need to find better ways to advertise our warming centers and be providing food and water at these centers, which currently we don't really do as a whole, and it's not really well advertised. So if we're truly going to help the people in the community, we have to start with the homelessness section. And I would love to see a way to branch this out where we're actually finding a center after hours other than the police department. So that's my first question to the town manager. Is there any other thoughts as to helping people with opioid crisis and homelessness and all the information gathering, like finding a shelter other than the police station after hours, that we could start collaborating and
just to make it
this?
clear, if you even contact the police, and if there's a real emergency, for the first few people, we get a hotel room. You would want to hit a certain threshold before you start pulling in other resources. You know, you wouldn't do it for the first, and we do that now.
Oh, because some places open up like this room or the senior center, like main area. That's what I'm talking about.
My
No
time here,
cost.
we've never had more than like one person ask for, so we wouldn't open this up for one person.
Well, I guess it's not advertised, you know,
No.
as a cooling center at night or an emergency, so.
The
I
problem
think
is
it's
we also
great.
have the union rules and other things. It would be a process to
Yeah,
get
well,
it in. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great to move all this. I think it's a great initiative. I'm all for recovery resources and making sure our town is taking care of our most vulnerable. So any way that we can collaborate and put this information up. There's information now that's not up on certain events. Some stuff's there, some stuff's not. So the town manager, how would this be run? Who would be putting all this up?
I'd give it some thought. I don't think it'd be really hard to do, though.
Okay.
Well, my vision for it too was to be broad enough so that the town manager could work with town staff and maybe they can come up with, you know, we have Lorena Clark and potentially now a second social worker that, you know, could work with Officer McClelland, who does a lot of community outreach. So I wanted to keep it broad enough that, you know, Town Manager Burke could start working with town staff and they could collaborate with the different departments so that they could come up with their own program that would work for us.
No, I think it's great. I think the more information out there, the better, and the more accessibility is important. And along with food, I'm hoping, you know, the thing that I spoke to him about making sure people have access to food is also posted, that they don't need an appointment. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Council Franco?
Thank you. I would like Councilor Casari to actually read her motion.
Sure.
On the floor, please.
I make a motion to allow the town manager to develop a social media and online campaign to educate the public on 211, substance and recovery programs, and health department updates on the opioid epidemic. I so move.
Second, Jacome.
I'll second that.
Moved by Kasiri, seconded by Jacome. Council Franco, you have the floor.
Thank you. I will support this. I think it's great. Just try and get out more information on the actual opioid addiction and substance abuse within our community. And I think many people don't know where to turn for help, and a lot of people, when they are in a crisis, they have a hard time trying to figure out where to go for help. So if they can maybe see these type of things in their day-to-day, so that if anything ever does happen, they would know where to go, I think would be wonderful. Is there a potential for, I don't know, is there any potential, Mr. Burt, for putting it on GMTV or public access television or radios or anything of that nature to do like a campaign, a full community campaign on this?
I think especially GMTV, we certainly could do that as well as social media.
Yeah, because I know GMTV, I mean, on some of the funding that they receive, it's very specific on what they're allowed to put on. So I'm just curious about that. But I would definitely like to have a full community, blitz on this, and that would be wonderful. So, and as I've heard other communities do. So thank you, Councilor Kasari, for bringing this forward. Your referral is very welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. And part of my reasoning for, trying to go the different routes of, website, social media, and GMTV was to really try and target all of the age ranges of all of our residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chacon.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Kassir, for bringing this up. I will say, I think Councilor Franco hit on the head that we need to leverage our social media tools. Being one of the younger councilors up here, I just, something I would love to just see on Facebook, on GMTV, SEC TV, signage. I think like we have in front of the Thrive 55. I think I constantly read that when I'm driving by. Pamphlets, like you said, and flyers to go to the schools and just pass around, and definitely just leverage certain stakeholders. So I'm very much in favor of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Something that I didn't bring up, if you'll allow me, Mr. Mayor, I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was an article in the Day through the Associated Press about animal sedative and fentanyl is causing wounds, scrambling efforts to stop overdoses. So the opioid epidemic is consistently changing. And if we can be updating the public on some of these new trends that we're seeing in the opioid crisis, this is also another, important tool to try to educate the public on. Thank you.
Councilor Bordelon.
Just to the town manager, the opioid money that we receive when we're voting to where it's going to be dispersed, would it make sense to keep some of that money to be able to put it into an education for our town? I believe that falls under that purview. Is that correct? Even if it was $1,000, it could be like an opioid awareness day. I've seen towns do T-shirts and community events and donate and advertising, and there's a lot of other things that we can do. When we're looking at that big pot of money, we can shave off 1,000 of it, or even $500 to $100 to be earmarked towards stuff like that. Is that correct?
Certainly in the future, the upcoming money's already been accounted for.
Well, yeah, that's.
But, if it's a priority to the council, it's not a lot of money. I'm sure we could come up with a way, one way or another, to do it. Doesn't have to be that money.
Right, because I do think that money is, part of the town, and I think this type of initiative awareness is a great way to put that money into helping facilitate from a town side, where we could be purchasing Narcan and stuff, do a Narcan training, you could bring in and make sure that money is, used towards educating our community, even if it's on a smaller basis. And also using our human services to its full capacity to, once again, it's not just a soup kitchen and trying to apply for heat. It's a broad spectrum with counseling and all of that. And so our human service should have a page where they're advertising this. And I'm shocked to see that that's not happening. So that we need to spike a campaign for it, which I'm all for. I just, hope that there should be more resources. We have the platforms, let's utilize them. And not just for opioids, for everything. There should be more information than not. So I hope in the future that we look to do that. And ways that we can make sure that pamphlets are available in lobbies at the Human Service Building. Sometimes they put them, if you go to London or other towns, they actually put the pamphlets in the food bags that they pick up, information, how to get a hold of 211. You find high traffic areas where people are, and you're able to put them in bags and boxes, Thanksgiving boxes, everything, information, 211, how to get help. So I just hope that is something that moves forward. And some towns are even, when they go into recess from their meetings, they're putting up information stuff up as well, instead of just the plain councils and recess, it could be a rolling thing of how do you get help, how do you get this, there's ways that we can utilize that, so.
I really like that.
I do think this is great. I'm just kind of shocked that we haven't been doing it, is all, so, a little saddened.
Councilor Westervelt?
Thank you. And Councilor Casari, I sincerely appreciate your bringing this to us. I know I grew up in a different time than a lot of people did. We didn't have the social awareness that we have now. Big thing for us was alcohol, a couple of kids smoking dope outside the, class or something, but there were the people that were on the fringes, and I did see it growing up, but it never really affected me until my kids have seen it, and they've experienced the loss that happens because of this. So I think it's very important. So thank you. I will support it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously, 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining.
Thank you for your support.
Motion to adjourn by Councilor Bordelon, second by Jones. All in favor say aye.
Sure, that'd be great. You could just-
Opposed, abstentions? We're adjourned at 9:33.